This debate is going to be a series of arguments for and against certain principles. On each team we have two people, Katie and Meredith, and Aaron and Alice. Each debate will be in the following format. Open statements from each team of 1 minute. Then each person will have 2 minutes to give their points of view. After this 2 minutes, we'll have a closed statement. When you reach the end of your time, I'll ring this bell and you'll have to end your point or finish on a question. For the open statement, the fourth statement will go first. Meredith?
Opening statement with regard to sell human organs. It should be the person's free will to do as they please with their body. If it be selling organs, then so be it. And that is my opening statement. Very short.
Sure, open statement. And the opposing team, open statement?
There should be a price on the body.
Zero price on your body. Those are the principles we're going to go over. Each team will now have 2 minutes to lay out their points, starting with Katie for the floor.
We think that we are a money-driven society. For example, someone would be way more happier to donate an organ such as a kidney if they were getting a large amount of money. If a donor has recently died, the money should be given to the donor's family. This way the family could afford funeral costs and it wouldn't just be going to something like the government. And there would be more people that would donate as they would be getting something back from it themselves. Also, people who can afford better healthcare should be getting a higher standard of healthcare. This means the NHS waiting list will decrease, therefore there will be less suffering and less death, and the standard of the healthcare for NHS will also rise. For example, in one case, a man was paying out $30,000 each time for a dialysis while on the waiting list. If he has that much money to pay for dialysis, he could just easily pay for an organ, and therefore he would live longer and he would have less suffering. Therefore, if people were allowed to sell organs, there would be less suffering and less death allowed.
And the pride for the opposite team would be Aaron.
Basically, there should be a price on your body, and if a relative was suffering, you can give whatever to that person. But I don't feel like you should be able to sell something that is yours. I think that just completely gives off the wrong like moral. You shouldn't be able to sell. It's not right. The word sell isn't right at all. You should be able to give it, but not do it for your own gain out of money. I think that's not right.
Yeah. Donating organs should be an act of human kindness, not financial.
Well, we're now moving on to Meredith's point of the human organs should be for sale. Meredith.
You brought up a point about selling the body is morally wrong. You could group that into the same way that you sell your labour, as in for work. So you are actually selling yourself, but you're now dividing up how you would sell different parts of yourself. Why not make it absolute rather than individual aspects of your body? So you are selling a physical part of yourself when you sell work on the labour market, as we have in this capitalist society.
Response from another team?
I mean, I think it's a completely different. It's completely irrelevant because when you're working, it's what you're brought up to do. I mean, you're brought up to know that you're going to work and you're going to be. That's what's expected of you. Selling your body and getting money for something like that is completely different. You're not brought up to think that way, and it's not something that a lot of people would do and think is okay. So, I mean, it's completely different. I mean, people are expected to work and they're expected to gain money from putting in labour, but they're not brought up or sort of socialised to expect that selling body part is okay, and that's even a better way than working.
It shouldn't really matter where the money comes from, whereas it's just being earned. I believe, I may stand corrected, but this system has actually been legal in America for quite some time. And you can get up to £20,000–30,000 per organ, and it's actually working out there quite well. If you legalise the sale of organs, you will actually, such as prohibition in America, it created the mafia. We also have the illegal organ trade. If you were to legalise this concept, the illegal organ trade and kidnapping of people to get their organs, such as people being drugged in bars, waking up in bars of ice, it would save the emergency services a lot of money in the long run, because the person that's had their organs taken from them would have to have an organ replacement anyway.
selling an organ is a big thing to do. It's a big decision to make. Do you think that it's right for the main incentive for such a big decision to be money?
Possibly not, but if that's what someone's free will wants them to do, if that's what they want to have out of it, if that's what they're motivated by, who are we as a government entity or any individual to restrict what they can and can't do with their body?
We're now going to the closing statements from each team. Start with 14. Closing statements.
Our closing statement is the same. It should be your own free will to decide what you can and cannot do with your body.
Your own free will, and the against team.
That it's wrong to encourage people to consider their bodies to have financial value and to mutilate their bodies just for financial gain.
And there's the closing statements. So that's been the debate for the legalisation of organs, selling organs. This second debate will be on the House believes that marriage is an outdated institution. Arguing for that principle is Meredith Katie, and against the principle, Aaron and Alice. Open statements, we start with the 14.
Okay. Marriage in an increasing secular society has no place other than possession and material meaning, thus invalidating the original purpose of the religious sacrament.
And the open statement for the team against?
That marriage is becoming less secular and more inclusive, and it allows people security, and it still works, and that a lot of laws take into account the importance of marriage, and it's all based on personal choice and should not be labelled as outdated.
And now for the main point from 14.
We think marriage is objecting women and it's sexist. The father has ownership over the woman as they give the bride away during marriage. We also think that the engagement ring is only for a woman, which also shows ownership, as if the woman is an object and not a person. And the man also has to ask the father for permission, as the woman doesn't have a say. So this also implies that a woman is not a person and they don't have their own right in the say of what happens. And also in some countries the woman has no say in marriage as it's arranged.
And the against team?
What you said about all the things to do with ownership and the objectivity of the woman. At the end of the day, people nowadays, especially in like Western society, can arrange when they get married, they can do it however they like. So though the things that you were talking about, like the engagement ring and the father giving the bride away, those are very traditional values to do with marriage, but they're not necessary. People can get married however they want.
Although you may say it's tradition, and I can agree with the traditional aspect, the objectification and the symbolic meaning on the text and on the marriage documents are still there. It is still, by definition, objectification.
There's the against team. You see the point of marriage in that institution.
Well, no, because we live in an increasingly feminist society, and clearly a lot of women, and yet a lot of women who do have feminist values still get married. Clearly they don't see the objectification. They don't see themselves as being objectified.
We also live in an increasingly secular society. About 60% of Britain consider themselves Christian, but nowhere near as many actually attend church or consider themselves devout other than being baptised or having it on paper from school. So marriage as a religious sacrament, which is what it was throughout history, unless of course you're referring to civil partnerships, but that's a different debate, is becoming less important.
I'll admit the traditional values of marriage are becoming less important, but I mean, people have non-religious ceremonies these days, and I don't think it's the concept of marriage that's becoming outdated. I think it's more the religious connotations that marriage has.
Point conceded.
Yep.
We'll go now, go to closing statements from each team, starting with the four.
As again, our closing statement is exactly the same as our opening statement. Marriage in an increasing secular society has no place because this is a religious sacrament, and it only enables, or its only benefit is material wealth and possessions.
And the against team?
That it's only the religious aspect of marriage that's becoming outdated, not marriage itself as an institution.
Excellent, both close statements. Good. This debate is going to be the House opposes the death penalty, arguing for that, arguing against it existing. Open statements, please.
A state that executes its prisoners shows an unwillingness to rehabilitate them back to society, which our prison system on paper actually is. The death penalty is a cop-out and goes against everything what the UK prison system stands for.
We are going to be arguing that the death penalty stops reoffending and is the most concrete way to do this, and it's economically cheaper, and it's done very humanely these days, and is a good way to counteract such problems as overpopulated prisons, and it is also a very good way of retribution.
Excellent, right. Now, start with you, start listing.
I'll start. People say it's a quick way out, sentencing someone to death can get rid of them straight away, but prison is actually for people who need rehabilitation, which means they need to go there to learn what they've done wrong and change and become a better person. If you're saying, oh no, they have to go straight and get killed, that's not going to give that person a chance. Also, it costs more to actually kill a prisoner. It costs 20 times more than actually giving that person a sentence. And that money that could have gone to kill that person could be spent on families who are the victims.
You said that prisoners should be rehabilitated, but it's statistically proven that regardless of how long they are in prison, regardless of what kind of help they get, most offenders will reoffend. It's statistical knowledge.
So the prison system should be, I mean, yes, the majority of offenders, once they come out, do reoffend, which is why the prison system needs to be reformed, worked over, and actually begin working properly. And
how are we meant to
failing
deal
at
with
the moment.
criminals in the meantime?
Sentencing. Working, change starts in the now. Change starts in the now. If we don't start it now, it won't change at all.
So until the entire prison system is reformed, which I imagine will take a pretty long time, we just let them be sentenced to go out and reoffend.
That is correct. Because it is the right to life, not a fundamental right that can't be taken away.
Even if someone has taken away someone else's fundamental right to live.
It could be argued, yes. It could be argued from, I'm going to say, a Christian standpoint in the Bible. Where the Bible does say an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. However, that is part of the amalgamation of the books, which was not actually written by God himself. Living in a Christian society, which we technically do, we are governed by the law of Christian theology and the Church of England, which, I remind you about the 10 Commandments. One of them is, thou shalt not kill. This is an absolute commandment that cannot be disobeyed. So, by killing someone, because they've killed someone, you are then sinning in which yourself, thus flooring the death penalty argument on everything it stands for. You are committing a crime by killing the person that killed someone.
So what about in a non-religious, what about from a non-religious stance then? Because not everybody who has ever sought the death penalty has been religious.
But we don't live in a secular society.
If you sentence someone to death, surely that means you're just being as bad. Okay, this person has done something wrong, but that person's killed someone and you're killing that person, so doesn't that make you just as bad as that person?
But from a non-religious viewpoint, it is a form of retribution in that the family of the person, say we're talking about a murderer here, the family of the person who's been murdered get to see the person that murdered their family member themselves being murdered, and that is, in terms of sort of the emotional repercussions of something like murder, that can be very effective.
I can see where you're coming from, but it's a very selfish and greedy thing to have, with which we're brought up in our society not to be selfish and greedy. We're supposed to be forgiving. So by getting retribution, you're being very selfish.
Yeah, but the fact is people will take it into their own hands as well.
Taking into account that is a very personal thing.
So say like if you know you saw your family member be killed, there's a high chance you'd want to actually kill them or see them be killed in and of itself, regardless of religion or anything else. Like it's a fact people would want to see justice.
Yeah, the death penalty would reduce the amount of vigilante justice that goes on.
But as I said before, the death penalty, sentencing someone to death can actually cost more than sentencing someone to prison. Therefore, the money that wasn't spent on killing that person could just go to the family that is of the victims. So then they would get money.
But the family of the victim would rather see the person that killed their family member die than get some money.
It's a very personal basis. Again, should personal affairs be allowed to intervene in the state?
The prison system, the justice system is all about personal affairs. It's
Because it doesn't work. It's a cop-out. It doesn't work as it is. It needs to be changed. And the only way we're going to change it into what it's supposed to be and what it's on paper is if we start changing it now, actually put proper programs into rehabilitating people. The reoffending isn't a failing of the individual. The reoffending statistics are a failing of the state, and they're a failing of the prison system itself.
how do you know that reoffending can be completely eradicated?
You don't. You've got to keep trying until it does.
And in the meantime, you just let them reoffend.
You've got to change it. You've got to change it. You've got to put in place religious doctrine. No, not religious doctrine. Just rule that. Doctrine and a system that will rehabilitate properly, and you've got to change it and change it and change it until it works.
That is a very, very long process. In the meantime, people are coming out of prison, reoffending all the time.
It is a very long
Not to
process, but the
mention
short term's a cop-out.
Even the fact that like prisons are overcrowded in and of itself, so it just shows that it's just going to get worse until people realise there's an actual strong punishment and a reason why they can't reoffend again. And they really do realise by witnessing it or by knowledge of the death penalty that it's not the right way to go, and they literally can't reoffend or offend in the first place.
But
Exactly.
that's an invalid statement, because even when the
The death penalty is the strongest deterrent against crime.
I'd say it's not, because when the death penalty was instated, crime was at an all-time high, and that wasn't a deterrent.
Do you have statistical proof of that?
Prisons were flooded.
Okay.
This is back in the times of in London, when I went to a Clink Museum a few months ago.
Oh yeah, I was meant to be there.
Death penalty was abolished actually it was abolished in 2004, because you could, from 1964 to 2004, you could be treason. It was abolished because it was impractical. It wasn't a deterrent. It wasn't working. So reinstating it, as it is in America, it would just be ludicrous. And it would deter the funding that you could spend on rehabilitation to the cop-out system of the death penalty itself.
But rehabilitation is often not a fruitful endeavour. At least you know with the death penalty you know what you're going to get.
That's why
You
you've got to
know
do it
what
properly.
result you're going to get.
Killing someone isn't rehabilitation, is it? You're not. If you're going to rehabilitate someone, you're not going to kill them because they're not going to learn from it, are they? All they're going to do is die, and that's not teaching someone what they've done wrong.
But you can argue that they're never going to change anyway.
Well, killing
Especially
someone
with
isn't
people
an
that
easy
will
way.
over.
You can't get any safe guarantee
offend.
with rehabilitation that you can with the death penalty, because you know once they're dead, they're dead. With rehabilitation, you never know what results you're actually going to get. You have to have faith in the fact that it's going to work, and statistics show that it doesn't a lot.
We've discussed a lot about the actual application of the death penalty, but I think we should talk about how the death penalty is conducted, how they go about it. Does anyone have something to say
Well, it's
about that?
conducted very humanely. I mean, a lot more humanely than the criminals themselves treat their victims. So it's not even full retribution, it's actually done very, very humanely. I mean, they recently introduced a way of doing it where they just inject you with something that renders you unconscious and then stops your heart. So there is no pain and no actual, I mean, there's no actual awareness of your own death because you're unconscious before your heart stops. So
Also, your point about it being as bad as what they've done is completely irrelevant because it is in a much more humane way rather than what, like you said, they do to their victims.
It's not necessarily the method, it's the actual act of killing that's the problem. It's the entirety of the death penalty.
And surely you said that you would want the victim's family, you would want them to see like the murderer or whatever be killed. Do you think the family would actually want to see that murderer being killed in a peaceful way?
It's not even so much the way necessarily, just even like their death.
Yeah, but say like the murderer put that person in like a really painful way, people are going to argue, oh, that person should go through death really painfully.
But they'd still be gotten rid of.
it allows retribution without without the families and the system sinking to the lows of the criminals because they do it in a nicer way.
Retribution is a religious term from Christian theology. So the retribution argument is again flawed from the Ten Commandments in the Bible. Secondly, retribution or revenge throughout historically has been brought through Christian teachings and Christian tenets.
I don't understand why religion keeps being brought up, considering a lot of people say they're Christian but don't actually follow up on it.
And you've also acknowledged that the Bible contradicts itself on matters of retribution and justice.
The Bible does contradict itself.
You could argue that
Why
Friend's
are you
not
using
even
it as
Christian
proofs
anymore.
to show that it's contradictory in itself?
You could argue that a Christian isn't even a thing anymore. I mean, that's, you know, essentially it isn't, because people don't follow up on it, they just say they're Christian because it's what's expected of them, or they've been brought up that way. It doesn't mean to say they stick to it, so religion really doesn't come into it at all.
Okay, so you said yourself earlier on that most Christians claim to be Christian, but actually are just very convenient Christians. They only go to church, like Christmas, and there's no actual sort of devotion there anymore.
Again, reform of the entire society, reform of the prison system to start with.
So until then people have to repent.
Yeah.
But the second you take away the money from the rehabilitation process, the rehabilitation process will fail. The rehabilitation process will fail, and you will eventually have a society governed out of fear, which is historically proven to not work because it will fall into fascist dictatorships. The second you rule a society out of fear, you have no respect. Uprising occurs, revolution occurs. So an entire revolution could be caused by the death penalty.
It's a very radical hypothesis.
It is a very radical hypothesis, however, it's very plausible.
Could you give
Yeah,
an example?
that's... Oh, sorry.
I couldn't give an example because it's never happened, however, using the logic you would be able to see.
If the proposal has not happened, then I'm afraid you have to draw the points.
That's draw my point.
We've come up to 12 minutes, so I'm going to ask each team to give their closing statements, starting with Phil.
Again, it's a cop-out. It stands against everything the prison system is supposed to do. The prison system is not supposed to be a punishment, and it represents an unwillingness. It won't do it, not can't do it, won't rehabilitate prisons.
And the closing statement for your team?
That it allows retribution and it is the only concrete way to eradicate the potential of reoffending.
Excellent, there's the final statements. And that's been the debate on the death penalty. We're now going to cut to commercials. Thank you. Welcome back from the commercials. The next debate will take place is this House believes that euthanasia should be legalised. Arguing for euthanasia is Aaron and Alice, and arguing against it is Meredith and a new member, Sophie. Open statements will be continuing. This time you'll be opening statements.
Our argument is that nobody should be vilified for wanting to escape from a life with no quality to it.
Assisted suicide and euthanasia go against everything a doctor or a nurse stands for with regards to the Hippocratic Oath for which they swear when they go into the service, of which they can do no harm.
Open statements done, so start.
Basically, when someone is in a lot of pain and they view their life as having no quality, they get no enjoyment out of life, there is there is no reason that we can see that they should be forced to continue living that life. And at the end of the day, the decision to take your own life is not a decision that anyone takes lightly. If you've actually made that decision, such a bold decision, you should be allowed to go through with it.
But at what point can we determine that life has an equality to it? At what point would you say that it's acceptable?
When you've taken it upon yourself to actually decide that you would rather stop living, that's a really intense decision to make, and clearly that indicates that you're not getting any pleasure out of life.
But what about feeling pressured and from getting into a state of mind, perhaps due to mental health, or getting into a state of mind where you don't feel like you can surpass that?
Well, that's the thing. If it was run by doctors and nurses, if people had official institutions to turn to, such officials could assess your state of mental health and could assess the quality of your decision to end your life.
It would go against what doctors have sworn, as which I said in my opening statement, the Hippocratic Oath. They're not allowed to do any harm. Assisting suicide and euthanasia would completely invalidate the reason why they are doctors.
But it would allow that person to escape from the harm that they are enduring on a day-to-day basis in their life.
At the end of the day, it's not actually down to them. It's that own person's decision. They shouldn't really have a huge say on their choices of something that important. I don't feel like, regardless of whatever their job is, I don't think it's actually up to anybody else aside from that person.
I can respect that, but it's also the same when it's assisted. If someone wants to take their own life, that is their decision. But to put that someone else, it's a very, very big responsibility for a doctor or another living being to have to kill someone, which is effectively what you're doing. You are killing them. You may be entering suffering, but you are killing that individual, betraying the oath of which you've sworn to be a doctor.
By theoretically doing someone harm by killing them, even though if you were to refuse, you would be sentencing them to more harm, to go back to the harm that they endure in their life on a day-to-day basis.
The issue is that their moral duty is to protect all life, and therefore we should respect human life and not allow someone to make that decision, and they may well change their mind. You know, you can't, once it's done, there's no going back. And people do often come out of situations like that, whether they may just be in the mindset where even if they don't have mental health issues, they may well change their mind in the future and be thankful that they didn't make that choice. But in a society where that can happen, there is no ability to go back.
But what about if the circumstances for which a person wants to end their life, there's no way those circumstances are going to change? For example, if someone is in a lot of pain because they have a horrible condition or a terminal illness that isn't going to go away, then they're not going to change their mind because their circumstances aren't going to change.
They may be in pain, but it doesn't mean that their whole quality of life is off. Even if you are in a lot of pain, you may have other things to live for that come around after you've made that decision.
But at the end of the day, if someone makes that kind of decision, they will follow it up no matter what. If someone really makes that decision, they will follow it through themselves. But if it's not legalised, they will be vilinised for it. They will be accused of taking the law into their own hands or doing something to look down upon. And I don't think that anyone should be looked down upon for wanting to escape from pain and suffering. And they will be if it's not legal.
But I think pain is subjective, and they may be going through a lot of pain, but for example, you know, they may make that decision and then they say they have a child or something occurs in their life that changes their circumstances. They may not feel like they can go back, or they may not be able to. It may occur after they've
permitted.
At the same time though, like I'm pretty sure they'd have looked into their future and decided it's not worth living for in the first place, and that's why they'd gone to that extent to ask somebody to sort of assist in suicide or whatever. They wouldn't sort of just be completely wrapped up in the moment. They'd think about everything, every possibility for something that serious.
And also, if they are determined and they are refused help, they will do it themselves. So either way, there is no coming back.
You say they'll do it themselves. They should be able to do it themselves. You say they shouldn't be villainised for having assisted suicide, but at the same time you're actually villainising and putting someone with guilty conscience for helping them.
It's better that a doctor or a nurse, someone who is trained to and who takes it upon themselves to endure harm in their work, has that burden than a family member or a friend. Because without official help, people will and do turn to their loved ones and their friends for help.
I think it's very difficult to say that it's better, something that society have so far agreed it's not right. There are a lot of things that people do that we don't agree with, and it may be safer if it were done officially, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because it's safer, it is the right thing to do. Yes, people may do it themselves otherwise, but it doesn't mean that we should allow it because it's still morally sort of contradictory.
But if it is inevitable, and in a lot of cases it is, people will take their own life regardless of whether they are permitted to or given assistance in doing so. It's an inevitability in a lot of cases. People will do it themselves. So I feel like it might as well be legal since it's inevitable either way.
I think there's already been discussion on this subject, so I would like each team to go to their closing statements. So to move this game.
Closing statement, you shouldn't be able to put a guilty conscience on some doctor or official just because someone would want to commit suicide or want them to help them commit suicide. It goes against everything they stand for as a doctor, it goes against everything they protect, preserve and promote.
And your team's closing statement?
That no one should be villainised for wanting to end their life when that life is full of pain and suffering and no enjoyment or pleasure, and that the burden of ending someone's life should not be put upon family and friends.
Okay, excellent. And that's the euthanasia debate. And this has been the debate for this session. Thank you to Sophie, Meredith, Aaron, Alice, and also to Katie, who's not here yet. Alright, thank you, and goodbye.
How did I find the debate?
Yeah.
I found it intense. It was very energetic, very fast paced at times as well. My favourite topic to debate would have to be the death penalty, because I'm very up on that, very passionate about that subject. I feel that it was a stalemate. I believe I didn't have enough research, and I believe I should have argued from a statistical perspective instead of a religious and theological perspective. My strongest debate was probably the death penalty again. It was the one that got the most attention, the one that got the most facts and theories out. Weakest debate was probably euthanasia, because I don't really have a strong opinion on that either way. None of my views changed throughout the debate, however they could have done provided a valid opinion with relevant information was provided by the opposing side. With my tactics, I would have researched more. I would have brought more relevance to specific country rather than worldwide statistics.
That was nice, I like that answer.